Welcome back in, everybody. It is good to see you. I am Benjamin Parker, joined by Simon Short. We are talking about centers today, centers in the NFL for 2022. And we have put together our top five, me and Simon. We have all kinds of offensive line content. For those of you who want it, we have tons of division. We divided them up by divisions and studied them that way. Then we have our entire NFL offensive line rankings, and now we're going back through and grabbing specific positions. So today is center. Appreciate you being with us. And Simon, how are you tonight?
I'm fantastic. We've been up to this for, weeks and weeks at this point, but even tonight specifically, getting all these rankings out, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a few hours here. I'm excited to hit centers and really get into the weeds.
Yeah, this is fantastic, and I think we're going to start off with maybe your numbers 5 through 3, and go ahead and lead us through that, and then I'll start talking about it.
Yeah. So you don't want me to start down at 29, right? You don't want me to rank all 29.
We can.
I'll save that. We'll let all the viewers hit the comments and tell us they want to hear 29 through 6, and
Okay.
I'll fill them in. Really, for me, I was able to get a pretty solid top 10, even a pretty good top 7. So some honorable mentions I just want to throw out there. For me, Ben Jones from Tennessee, Rodney Hudson from Arizona. Those guys were very close for me to making this top 5 list. My 5 through 3 in order, I have Ryan Kelly of the Indianapolis Colts. I have Creed Humphrey of the Kansas City Chiefs, and I have Frank Ragnow of the Detroit Lions. Ryan Kelly for me was the toughest between him, Hudson, and Jones, who I was going to put in. I think a big thing for me, what I found through this whole process is, what does the offensive line look like together? You can look at each individual player and see their technique. And in Kelly, I think it's all fine. I think he gets a good push off the line of scrimmage. I think he seals really well. They like to do a quick seal in either direction with him to create a hole up the middle. I think he has a good anchor, good push off the line of scrimmage. But for me, what solidified him in that 5 spot is just how he plays with the whole offensive line. It might look a little bit different this year with Matt Pryor being the left tackle, and then Danny Pinter coming in at right guard for Mark Lewinsky. So Kelly might not look quite as good, but I think for what we've seen from him, watching Nelson, Kelly, and Glowinski the last couple of years in that interior work together has really kind of set Kelly apart for me. So I have Humphrey at 4. We've talked a lot about him. I think he could easily jump into, maybe even the top 2 this year. Gets to the 2nd and 3rd level really, really well. Really good run blocker. And then Frank Ragnow, just really good all the way around. I mean, this guy also could be a top 2 center by the end of the season. So we'll see. He's a guy that might be competing for an all-pro spot. But Ragnow just really good, really physical, really strong, good length, good quickness, can move around a little bit. Really, really good at everything you look for. So 5 through 3, Ryan Kelly, Creed Humphrey, Frank Ragnow.
Everything you said about Ryan Kelly is true, and I don't have him up there in my top 5, but certainly that's on the table, especially with all the people he's playing with. He's playing with some really, really good people there in Indianapolis. My 5 through 3 are like this. The Commanders, Chase Roulier, I've got him as a B-. I've got him at number 5. He's balanced. He's not dominant in anything, but he's very solid in pass protection, very solid in run blocking. So I like him there. He showed promise even in years 1 and 2 in the league, and this goes back to before he even had some good running mates. He had Sheriff, but before he had some of the other running mates that the Commanders have now, he was showing promise then. He's continued to get better. He's a guy who's gradually gotten better each year. Doesn't get a lot of attention for it. Very smooth. Again, he's not going to dominate, but I like him at number 5 there. From there, for me, business picks up real quick. I've got Frank Ragnow. You already mentioned him, but I've got him at number 4. I think you're at 3. I've got Ragnow ranked as a B- to a B. Ragnow's been very good at this for quite a while now. He's a stud. He's not going anywhere. He's locked in. Fantastic center. The Lions have him. We talked about the Lions in depth. I think what's interesting, I have Creed Humphrey at 3. You have Humphrey at 4. It's fascinating to me that neither one of us put Humphrey in the top 2. because Humphrey got a world of attention last year, and some of it deservedly so as a rookie for Kansas City. But I can actually speak pretty well on this, even more than I can some of these guys. I've spent so much time watching it. Do I like Humphrey? Yes. Do I think he's going to be one of the best centers in football for a very long time? Yes. Did the Chiefs get a steal in the second round here? Yes. All of that is true. But I will say this just as kind of a wait and see on Creed Humphrey. His run blocking is way ahead of his pass blocking. He still has a lot of room to improve on pass protection. That's not unusual for offensive linemen. But the one further thing I would say is this: not many teams challenged Creed Humphrey last year up the middle with their defensive tackles or with extra blitzers. They were challenging the edges the entire season. So there wasn't a lot of trial by fire for Creed Humphrey. He went through high pressure playoff games, yes, but in terms of his position, his area being just attacked and time after time after time, the defenses weren't doing that. They were backing off and they were clipping on the edges. They were crushing the edges, the tackles, because it was just easier, quite frankly. It was a whole lot easier to go after the tackles for the Kansas City Chiefs than it was that interior of the offensive line. And he got a lot of help from Joe Thuney over at left guard, some help from Trey Smith, but really a lot from Joe Thuney. So do I believe everything is going to fall in place for Humphrey to be one of the best, if not the best in the game for a long time? Yes. But he still hasn't been pushed to his limits yet. And I think he'll hold up fine. But maybe some of that press that he got last year was a little bit higher than maybe it should have been. The PFF grades that everybody talked about and being the top ranked center in football last year is true, but a lot of that was a surging run blocking grade that he was getting. Pass protection was just not quite as stout. So love Humphrey, but I've got him at 3. You're at 4 with him. Feel free to talk about any of that, or feel free to kick over to your number 2.
All I'll say is no better to hear about Kansas City anything, especially offensive line, than this guy right here. So yeah, I think you're exactly right. Really excited for what he's going to do. I mean, listen, we have him as the 3rd and 4th best center after one season as a second round pick.
One season.
That's pretty good. I think it's fair to say we like him. If there's Creed Humphrey
right.
haters or fans out there that think we're haters, I promise you you're not, because I wish the Steelers took that guy 24 last year. Or 25, whatever the pick Najee Harris was, let alone in the second round when he was still there. So he's going to be up there for a long time. The guys we're about to talk about, we have a very grizzled veteran who's going to be giving up a top 2 spot here in the next year or two, we think, because my number 2 is Jason Kelce. You want to talk about great run blockers? This guy's one of the best, if not the best, run blocking center in the league. Despite being 34 years old, despite being undersized, which I've talked about a lot, he's just been the perfect fit for Philadelphia and what they want to do. He seems to get better every single year. The best ability is availability. That he does not miss games. This guy is just, he looks like he's 25 out there running around. And, with Creed Humphrey, you see him at the 2nd and 3rd level as a, 22, 23-year-old. Jason Kelce is doing it at 34. So I have Jason Kelce at 2. And I have Corey Linsley at 1. This was a guy that when Green Bay let him walk in favor of, drafting Josh Myers, that was a big surprise. I think a lot of people were taken aback by it. But this is just another trend of, if you can get a really good center to come in with a young, talented quarterback, there's almost nothing better you can do other than get him, a really good left tackle as well. But Linsley, really good push off the line of scrimmage, always looking around. I mean, the best centers are the ones that are always looking to help out, because it's not too often you get defensive linemen, like you said, rushing straight up the middle. Here's my thing with Linsley. With centers, because they have to snap the football, you don't always get the best hand usage and like arm extension or anything like that. He is a really good punch for a center. So to be able to snap the ball and then get a good punch to give you good distance from the defender and help with your anchor get set, is a really, really impressive skill that not many centers can do. And I think he's by far the best at it. So I have Linsley 1 and I have Kelce 2.
Very, very, very all of that is true. One thing I have noticed here as we've gone through the offensive line, I just didn't think about it. I think you talk about punch a lot in hands, and I've noticed myself noticing the feet a whole lot more. Both are important, and I'm not going to argue about how to rank it, but I just have noticed that. But something that keeps popping up here. Talk about Jason Kelce for a second. You mentioned he hasn't missed a game since 2014. Not one game. That's 7-8 seasons that he's been answering the bell cow. I think he's made all pro 4 of the last 5 seasons, if I'm counting right here at a glance. He's been voted Pro Bowl, I don't know, 5 of the last 6 seasons in a row now, basically. It's phenomenal. What he's done, what he continues to do. At some point, he's got to drop off, right? At some point, he's got to not be as good. Yeah, so I've got him number 2. We could talk all night about Jason Kelce. Everybody in Philadelphia loves him. He's one of those examples of if you play at least pretty well and you don't say anything stupid, the city of Philadelphia will love you. If you don't play pretty well, if you say something stupid, the city will hate you. But the city absolutely loves Jason Kelce, and rightfully so. And that brings us to the number 1. I have Corey Linsley number 1 as well. I can't say enough good things about Corey Linsley. I would rather have him than anybody else in this list heading into this season. And that is simply because Humphrey hasn't quite yet been put through total fire and brimstone at those. And by the way, hey, not to hammer Humphrey, a lot of NFL teams don't pressure up the middle anymore. That's kind of something that they would rather attack the edges. They would rather drop back in zones. They're kind of afraid to bring extra heat up the middle, except for the occasional surprise, the occasional dog, right? But back to Linsley. Linsley is very well-rounded. Linsley is really good in pass protection, really good. And he's also really good in run blocking. So that's why I'd rather have Linsley personally. Plus, Linsley has been doing it for a longer period of time. And maybe Humphrey will be right up there with him in a season or 2. Obviously, we love Creed Humphrey. But for me right now, Corey Linsley is the guy, unless you still think the only reason I wouldn't take Jason Kelce is I think he's got at the bottom's got to drop sometime. That's the only reason. So, Corey Kelce has been the number 1 center in football many times in his career. I don't think he was last year, but man, at some point, Kelce's got to drop off. Give me Corey Linsley as the best center in football heading into 2022.
I think really interesting with the centers here. Yeah. You have Kelce, who's 34. You have Linsley, who's 30. You have Ragnow, who's 26. You have Creed Humphrey, who's 23. So we're essentially seeing the best center in football over the next, let's say a 10-year time span. Let's say Kelce for the last 2 years, Linsley the next 2 years, Ragnow maybe the next 2 years as he gets into his mid to late 20s, and then Creed Humphrey coming right after that. So we're all set, man. We're set at center for the next couple of years from Kelce all the way to Humphrey, and it's a pretty good time. I'm excited about it.
It's an interesting thing. You mentioned the Packers. The Packers were one of those teams who, yeah, they could have found a way to have kept Linsley, but money starts to kick in there. And you have to decide somewhere. You can't pay everybody. You just can't. The Eagles have tried their darndest, and they haven't been able to do it. So the Saints tried their best. They couldn't do it. You just can't pay everybody. On the flip side, though, drafting a guy like Creed Humphrey, there are a lot of people who don't want to draft a center in the first round. But I guarantee you, when we do these redrafts in 2 or 3 seasons, Creed Humphrey is going to be somewhere in the top 10 of guys that you would take. And I think my question is this: if you knew a guy, and obviously you don't, but if you knew a guy, whether it's a center or a guard or a linebacker, if you knew he was going to be one of the 10 best players in the draft, why not go ahead and take him regardless of position? That's personally my feeling on it. It's just never made sense to drop these guys off in the second round because of position. And then 3 years later, the guy you thought needed to be drafted in the first round isn't even in the league anymore. Meanwhile, the guy that you said, we can't draft him in the first round because of his position, he's looking at the Hall of Fame. That has never made sense to me ever.
You're talking to a guy who just had Marquise Pouncey retire as a Steeler fan and a guy that covers them. And they took him in the first round, 18th overall, 2-time All-Pro, 9-time Pro Bowler. If it weren't for some injuries, probably a few more all pros in there. So yeah, man, absolutely. If you can get a multi-time all pro and a 10-year starter who's going to be a top 10 guy, top 5 guy at the position for a majority of the time he's in the league, you take that guy anywhere in the draft you can, unless there's a quarterback that has a, let's say above the normal average, right? The 50-50 shot at a QB, unless you got a guy who's in the 70-30 tier, like maybe the Trevor Lawrence was, or, going back to and Andrew Luck. Yeah, just go take a guy that's going to be a multi-time all pro for sure. Regardless, guard, tackle, wide receiver, center, defensive end, whoever.
I agree. And I get it. Maybe if you're in the top 5 picks of the draft, maybe there's a couple of positions you don't want to go after because you're convinced that the talent at the special spots, right, is so good you can't pass that up. But once you get outside of that, to me, all bets are off. If I'm going to draft a guard at number 6 overall and number 8 overall, I'm going to do it. I don't give a flip what anybody else says. To me, Zion Johnson is one of those guys. Zion Johnson he was drafted on 15, 16, 17. He could easily be number 5 overall in a redraft in 3 seasons. While some of the guys that were some of the more important positions, the more impact positions, they're sitting on a bench somewhere. They're hoping that somebody else picks them up in a season once their rookie contract is over. I understand the impact positions and why guys do it, but if you're convinced that a guy is going to be elite for a long time, like you just said, why not go ahead and jump on it?
Absolutely. Of course, we turned the center ranking video into a team building philosophy video, but yeah, those are your top 5 centers.
Yeah, those are your top 5 centers plus a little bit extra. And, I'm sure we can talk Atari or Star Wars or,
my gosh,
Marvel Universe if you want.
Now, listen, here's why Iron Man would have been a good left guard in the NFL. All right,
there we go.
Let's do that. I'll do this at some point.
Simon, before I do some advertising, tell everybody where they can find your stuff at.
Yeah, so start by following on Twitter at Simon_Short with 2 T's. I put all my work on there. So written work is at phantomsportsindustries.com. And anything else, you can find me over here with Ben on YouTube, but I have the Simon Short podcast as well, where I cover everything from NFL to other sports to fandom pop culture things. So go check that out. Pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts, that's the Simon Short podcast. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Simon, thank you. Everybody, thank you for watching. Again, if whatever platform you're watching on, thank you. It might be Sports and Money or it might be Phantom Sports. Also, you can check out the Phantom Sports website. Simon mentioned it. Tons of articles over there, not just about the NFL, but about all kinds of sports. Over my head here, this is the set for the In the Flat podcast that we do every single week, in season, out of season, with Tony Kill and Jordan Schultz. We have more content in other places, but those are some of the highlights. Thank you so much for watching. Let me find the stop recording button, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.